Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Garry Tonon, 6-0. Should be fighting for the One Championship featherweight title very soon. We hope. Man, this has been an absolute roller coaster. Does this mean you get to eat some Christmas turkey now that the fight was postponed again? And how savage has it been dealing with these postponements?
Yeah, man. So I guess I'll get to enjoy the holidays a little bit more. I had my family come down because I thought I was gonna. We knew the fight was postponed, but they didn't really give us They didn't really give us a good idea of when. Well, they did, but I think it was inaccurate. I kind of knew it was going to be inaccurate because they said a few weeks, and the fight was December 5th. So like a few weeks from December 5th is like Christmas or New Year's. And I'm like, the likelihood that they're going to reschedule an event for Christmas or New Year's, tell their whole staff that they got to like miss the holidays or whatever, it just seemed unlikely to me that was going to happen. Then I was like, all right, well, maybe early January, maybe like the first weekend in January after New Year's or something like that. Maybe that's when it's going to be, because I had like no indication of like what was going to happen. So then I had my family come down, spend some time with me for Christmas, and then they're going to go to Pittsburgh. But now that I found out that it's postponed a little later, I have some time to go back to my jiu-jitsu gym that I own in New Jersey. So I'm going to promote some people to black belt that have been, it's been a while since they probably deserved their black belt. So I'm excited to give out some of those promotions. And then I'll probably be back home for actual Christmas. I'll probably actually be in Austin.
So how much do you concern yourself with keeping up to date with the comings and goings of Singapore, the pandemic, One Championship? Do you let your agent deal with everything? Like, how does it work for you? Where do you hear all your information from?
Nah, I have guys that advise me, but like I deal with One Championship pretty directly, which, in certain ways it's like very convenient, right? Like, so if I need to, I could usually get a hold of Chatri. It might take a day or two or something, but I could usually speak to whoever it is that is fully responsible for whatever is going on, instead of having to talk to an agent and then have the agent talk to whoever. You know what I mean? It's just like, in a way, it seems like it's less work, but like you got to talk to somebody anyway. So like, to me, I'd rather just kind of have the direct line. So yeah, it's been me personally dealing with it mostly. And I try to be like patient with things, so I don't like try to harass, especially since I do have a direct line to these people. And I know what it's like to be busy and have people constantly messaging you and stuff. I try my best to ask a question every once in a while and let that be that, and then give them their time to get back to me. And if they don't, then, I'll ask another question. Right. So, yeah, I've been dealing with it pretty directly. And, yeah, I mean, I've gotten feedback. I wish that things would have been a little bit more clear as to when the fight. I mean, maybe they didn't know, but I think, it's tough, especially when you're planning things around the holidays with family and stuff like that, to know, to not know when you're fighting within a reasonable time frame. You know what I mean?
So where are we at now? Do we still not know? Do we know a month? Are we looking at January, February, and how are you dealing with that? Like, in terms of building up so that you plateau at the right time or peak at the right time?
Sure. I don't know what I'm allowed to tell you guys, but I mean, basically it's not happening in January. Let's put it that way. It's not going to be, at least the way they've communicated it to me, it's not going to take like another 6 months or anything. But it's not happening in January. So we got a little bit more time than that. I guess let's just say it's definitely happening within the first half of the year. But still what I would consider to be the early part of the year, So, yeah, that's what I know as of right now. They did not give me, even if I told you everything that I know, they did not give me a precise date anyway. So they didn't say like, oh, February 12th, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't say that. So, I can't really be that precise with what I'm saying anyway. And I don't even know how precise it is, the information that they gave me, we went from a few weeks to a few months now. So, I'm not really sure.
You were linked to fighting Thanh for ages, and then you kind of earned your way to fighting him. Then it was released, and then you've done media face-offs. You've kind of been on the same call as him. Are you sick of him in any way, shape, or form? That you kind of want to move on and get the fight done, or is it nice to be able to kind of add to your skills even more?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, for preparing for somebody for so long, I noticed like at this point in time, like, because you prepare so much, especially for certain things that a person does, it like kind of changed the way that I do MMA, right? Like I fight differently now. Like I don't, especially because of the way that Thon fights. It's very specific. It's like a very different type style of fighting than most people. I had to change some things, not necessarily. It's hard to explain. I had to be in certain situations to prepare myself for this fight adequately, and by forcing myself in those situations so often, it now has become a personal preference to be in those situations. Like if I could put it in jiu-jitsu terms without giving away too much of what my what my game plan is here. Let's say for example, I knew somebody was like a half guard specialist in jiu-jitsu, and I spent a ton of my time being in half guard and like defending against those, attacks and submissions or whatever the case may be. If you do that enough and you continue to force yourself into that position, it's like, oh shit, all of a sudden half guard is one of my main positions now. It's like I've gone here as a personal preference now, not just to prepare myself, because you do something for over a year. I mean, I've been preparing for this fight for over a year. You do something for over a year, you're not just prepared for what your opponent's going to do. Like you're starting to get good in those positions. And it's like, it starts to become somewhere where you can be as effective perhaps as that person is. So, yeah, man, it's been interesting. I don't know if I'm like sick of it or any of those sorts of things. I appreciate, especially considering this is a title fight, it's a pretty big deal. I appreciate having adequate time to prepare. I think it's definitely gone on a little longer than I would have liked. But yeah, as long as it happens, it is what it is. I think as long as we don't postpone again, I'm still going to be pretty happy with everything. I definitely wish I would have had another fight. To have to wait a year for every fight is a little, it's a little annoying, but part of it was me getting injured too. We probably would have fought a little earlier if I hadn't gotten hurt too. So I can't blame it all on him or blame it all on the organization or anything like that. So it was there's a bunch of things that happened that are out of everybody's control. He got hurt, I got hurt. The organization says there's some COVID concerns, these sorts of things. So it is what it is, man. But I feel very, 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 very prepared. Like more prepared than I could ever possibly be for this fight.
Well, that's good news. Would you, or are you allowed to take a grappling bout to kind of stay sharp, or is that not something that's on your radar?
Man, you know what? Under any other circumstances, I probably would. Like that's what I have done previously in my career is like, if I felt like a long enough layoff, for example, when we were doing our contract renegotiations, I think somewhere after my 5th fight, there was a little bit of a lull, and my immediate response was, well, let's take some jiu-jitsu matches. And I took some matches. I competed in ADCC. Like I did some things, to occupy my time. And it made sense at the time. And like MMA was my main focus, but I was pretty certain that I wasn't going to be fighting for quite some time. So, I took some of those matches. But now because it's a title fight, it's just that much more serious. So even though I kind of have a rough idea, I'm not gonna be fighting for a while. I think that it makes the most sense to just keep committing to this thing, keep getting good at this thing and keep working on it and be the best that I could possibly be to fight Don Lee and not split my attention and focus, because I do have to train a little differently if I'm preparing for a grappling match. Could I do it? Sure. Could I start doing grappling matches, win those, and beat Thon? Yes, probably. But it's just like it's one of those things. Like I really, really want this, man. And I just don't want to. I want to take all the possible variables out of it and just make this about winning that belt, man. So when I win that belt, when I have the championship, maybe if I know that there's going to be a lull like this in the future, maybe I'll go back. Maybe I'll consider doing grappling matches in between. ADCC is coming up this coming year in 2022. It's going to be a really exciting event. I think they're doing it in Vegas. That's probably going to be the most heavily promoted ADCC that's ever happened. I would love to compete in it. If I am the current champion at one, I think I'll have a little bit more say in the matter in terms of my fight schedule and things. So I think I'll be able to find a way to do it. You know, if I'm still hunting for that belt or this gets postponed again or something, I probably won't be able to make that happen. But I really would love to grapple in that event.
A couple of years ago, you were scheduled to fight Dustin Poirier, which would have been a pretty sexy fight. What happened, and can that be picked up again? I think fans would love to know that.
Yeah, man, I would love to do that. I don't know what his interest level is in doing that again. I'm sure for him it was probably more for fun, I would guess. I don't really know. You know, I haven't heard of him doing any grappling shows except for that one. So it leads me to believe that either somebody that he knew like kind of convinced him to do it because of something, or maybe there was some charity money involved. He seems like he's super into to donating to a lot of charities and stuff. So super good guy. So I don't know what it would take to make that happen again, but yeah, I would love to do something like that. You know, if a match like that came up, maybe I could consider doing it in between, right? Because it's a little different. I wouldn't be preparing for another grappler. You know, let's say, for example, they try to put me against, you know, one of the Rotolo brothers, which are like the up and coming guys in my weight class right now, 170, right? So these guys are super sharp. They're on top of their game. They're going to be probably competing in ADCC. I'm assuming, I don't know if how they did. I'm assuming they one of them won trials or whatever. I mean, they're sharp, dude. Like I have to make sure that I'm on my game as far as precise jiu-jitsu is concerned, competing against somebody like that. If I'm competing against another guy whose main focus is MMA, I could do that. Because I could basically just not change anything that I'm doing. I would just keep training MMA exactly the way that I'd be doing it, train jiu-jitsu exactly the way that I'm doing it. And then I would just have the match, you know, feeling pretty confident that I'd be just as prepared as I would need to be for a match like that. But yeah, man, that would be an exciting thing to do. I always love the idea of those kind of cross-promoted events because, you know, the chances of me fighting a guy like Dustin Poirier is pretty limited considering we're in different organizations, right? But the fact that we are able to find a way to test ourselves against each other in grappling because, you know, it's a different sport or whatever is kind of cool. You know, people get to see what it would be like for us to do some level of combat against each other, maybe not fight, you know?
Who do you think is? I think it's a really cool time for grapplers in MMA. I mean, if you look at Oliveira, look at Buchecha, even after 2 matches, right? He's looking great. Look at yourself fighting for a world title. Who do you think's the best MMA grappler right now in the world?
Okay. Well, I would have said. Well, first of all, when I hear the word grappling, I hear something different than what some people hear. Sometimes when people hear the word grappling, they think like submission, you know, like a submission specialist. And grappling to me is a kind of an all-inclusive blanket term that involves wrestling and sambo and all these other kinds of martial arts that could be involved. So before Khabib retired, I would have just said Khabib, even though like, I mean, he definitely submits people, even though he's not like a jiu-jitsu guy per se. I mean, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, the dude literally he just beat everybody, you know, using grappling. I mean, there's no question about it. Like, sure, did he land some strikes here and there? Absolutely. But like his ability to control people on the ground, which in my eyes is grappling, and his ability to get it there was second to none. I mean, he really, the only time I can ever remember him really having too much trouble with it was with another guy that's a pretty good shoot boxer, Gleason Tebow. And that's like the only fight I can think in my memory where he even like it was like really competitive in terms of grappling, you know? So that's who I would say. Now that he's retired, who's really using grappling in MMA? I mean, Damian Maia is always still a big one. I don't think he retired yet. I mean, it's kind of crazy that he hasn't, but not that he's not doing well. Not that he's not doing well. It's just like, you know, he's been doing this for a really long time. But he's another one who like, maybe he didn't win the championship, but like he got pretty damn close and like has been doing really, really well. Beats a lot of people with grappling on a really high level in MMA. And then past that, I mean, you could probably start pointing to guys like me, you know. I think that there'd be a pretty decent case to suggest it. And then there's also the question, every time somebody asks me that question, I always try to say that you got to split that question into two parts, because there's when you say who's the best grappler in MMA, do you mean in a grappling competition, or do you mean using grappling in MMA? You know, because using grappling in MMA is a little bit of a different conversation. And then you got to start factoring guys like Damian Maia and Khabib into that question, right? Well, even though he's retired. But like, if we're talking about in a straight up grappling match, like I've pretty much consistently proven that I'm basically the best grappler in MMA. I mean, with the exception now that Buchecha has started fighting because of the size difference. I mean, and his accolades, I guess you could say like he's the best grappler in MMA, right? If you're talking about in a pure grappling match. But even when I fought Buchecha years ago, I mean, we had a very competitive match. I lost by like a point or 2 points or something in ADCC. I had numerous submission attempts on him. So, I mean, we're on a pretty, as in terms of pound for pound, I mean, we're in pretty equal playing field. And, you know, in terms of people that are within my weight class, I've competed against guys like Davi Ramos, beat him, competed against guys like Gilbert Burns, beat him. You know, I mean, these are the guys that are, in terms of pure grappling, grappler versus grappler, I've actually had competitions against these guys and beat them on professional stages. And they're considered to be the best, I would say, at least pure grapplers involved in mixed martial arts, right? So I think, especially for that question, it makes it a little bit more certain that it's me, you know, and especially pound for pound, if we're going to say.
I think that's a pretty fair argument. I'm interested because on your card, when we get to see it, you know, DJ versus Rod Tank, special rules. Is that something that incites your interest? You know, 1 round MMA, 1 round submission grappling, 1 round striking, playing with the rules, or do you like to keep the rules as they are?
There's some fun to be had, you know, for sure, with events like that. I definitely would. I would never want a blanket statement say that I would never do something like that, because I think it would be taking my name out of the mix for some pretty cool possibilities in terms of events and things. I think that those types of things would have to be handled very, very carefully. You just got to be very, when you're doing something like that. I mean, we'll see what happens with DJ. I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but you know,
it's surprised that he took that fight.
I don't know if I'm surprised. I mean, you have to remember too, DJ's in an interesting place in his career, right? So DJ's already won the world title at his weight class in a different organization, you know, multiple times over, right? So like for DJ to take a risk in his career is not like the end of the world, right? Like, let's say he does this weird match against Rod Tang and like gets knocked out or something. I mean, sure, still getting knocked out is terrifying, right? Like, I mean, at least for me, I don't know, maybe he doesn't find it terrifying. I find it terrifying. I don't want to be knocked out by anybody, but in terms of his career, like, I don't think anybody goes, oh man, DJ's sucks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's done everything that he needs to do. So he can I feel like he can take a little bit more risks and play around and stuff like that in his career. So I don't know. I don't think I'm unbelievably surprised. I think when you're a guy like him who's done so much, that the doors start to open for some more creative displays of your talent, because people have already kind of seen what pure displays of your talent are, right? Like, they know how they've seen you do MMA before. They've seen how spectacular you are, you know, so now they want to see something a little bit different. Right. So I'm definitely open to doing something like that, but it would have to be very carefully planned, and the opponent would have to be I'd have to be very sure about the opponent and exactly how it was going to go. Like, for example, I don't know exactly what the round structure is for the DJ Rod Tank fight, but it makes a big
Muay Thai MMA.
Okay, yeah. So it makes a big damn difference that it's Muay Thai first and then MMA second, right? Like, that's a huge deal. You know, at least for me, if I'm competing against somebody, let's say I'm in the same situation, maybe it's not Rod Tang, but it's somebody within my weight class that does Muay Thai, right? And I get to do MMA first, I can, with a fair degree of certainty, suggest that I might submit this person in the first round. And then it's like, all right, well, now I don't have to deal with getting my head teed off on against, you know, somebody in a pure Muay Thai, you know, round, right? So that's what I mean by careful planning. It's just like, you know, those kind of things make a huge difference. I am a little surprised that he allowed it to be like Muay Thai first and not MMA, and he didn't fight like hell to make it MMA first.
Fair play to him. He wants to challenge himself, I guess. Yeah, in terms of being scared of being knocked out, I mean, we all saw what happened to the doctor, right? Super Bond's knockout. That was insane. One of the knockouts of the year. I don't know if you saw it, but yeah, that's the last question from me. And how in touch with you are you with one? I want to know who's impressed you really since you joined the organization. Who stands out as someone who really excites you as an MMA fighter?
Yeah. Well, so talking about that fight, that was pretty crazy. Yeah. It's, you know, especially with how precise Giorgio usually is. Like you just don't see him as a guy where a head kick even has an opportunity to slip through, right? It's like you watch his fights and like, obviously it can happen to anybody, but when you watch like what he does, it's just like, it seems like there's no error ever. Like it's so crazy watching him fight. Everything's so perfect. So like for something like that to happen to him, it's even more terrifying for somebody like me. Cause it's like, oh yeah, for sure. If it could happen to Giorgio Petruzzi, it could definitely happen to me. But in terms of who impresses me, well, I definitely think Christian Lee was impressing me quite a bit. I think I don't remember specifically. I think he had a loss recently, right?
He lost to Okray Yoon, and he was pretty pissed off about it because he didn't think that he deserved to lose on the judges' scorecard. He lost the title.
So it was like a judge's decision thing. Okay. But prior to that, I mean, he was on a pretty big tear. He worked his way up pretty quickly. He was beating a lot of really tough guys. He beat, I remember, I want to say, did he beat the guy that Eddie Alvarez fought in his first fight? That guy.
He beat Timothy Nastyukhin and he beat Yuri Lapidus. Yeah. He knocked them both out in the first round.
Yeah. So like, dude, those are tough guys. I remember standing because I want to say it was one of my first couple events was that first fight that Eddie Alvarez had with Timothy Nastyukhin
in Japan.
Yeah, well, maybe that wasn't my first couple events. It was one of my like first 4 fights or something like that. Maybe I don't know, something like that. And I'm like on the warm up mats next to that guy, and he is just cracking pads. He's just jacked out of his mind, and I'm just like, damn, this guy, like this is a monster, you know, and. Yeah, like and then he fought Eddie and he did really well. And I was like, damn, guy's really, really good. So, you know, for somebody like Christian, who's a little bit more up and coming, younger guy, you know, to show his skill set, be able to beat guys like that, you know, that are beating guys that have been at this game for a really long time. I think it says something, man. And he was winning on a very consistent basis. I didn't see the fight, which he disagrees with the judge's decision, so I can't add my input to that. But I just know that he's been doing really well. I think he impresses me a lot. In my own division, there was a guy that beat Martin, who I'm definitely looking at. I forget his name, but yeah, he definitely like is impressing me as well. But that's those. I kind of tend to pay most attention to like the guys in my division and the division above.
Jae-Woon Kim.
Yeah, I tend to pay most of my attention to those fights because they're guys that I'm going to potentially be fighting in the future and stuff. So
makes sense. Yeah, the Christian Lee fight, absolutely. I think the fans would love that one. You're a busy man, so I'm going to let you go. I'm so sorry this went on quite long, but it's great to catch up with you, Garry.
That's okay. No worries. This morning for me, I just woke up, so it's all good. Thank you.
Watch UFC Fight Night Font versus Aldo on Sony 10 this Sunday.